Hey guys, this is Austin.
And John.
And welcome to another episode of the Meatgistics podcast. We've been back and forth on special episodes, non-special episodes, but this week is a special episode, so I'm excited. We've got another guest with us today. We've got Kurt Ratzlaff from the BHA. He is a part of the local Kansas chapter, and we've been doing a lot with BHA locally here lately. And Kurt, but we will get to what we specifically do with him and what his story is and some stuff from him. But we always have to get to the most important thing of the day first, and that is the beer of the day. So I'll kick things off and we'll run down the table here and we'll see what everybody's got. So I've got the Stone Delicious Ipa today. I really was kind of looking for something different. And as I was looking through the liquor store, I ran across this and I was just like, nope, I'm done. This is where I'm going. It's another what I'd call just like a staple IPA. It's nothing super fancy, super crazy, but it's just really good. One of my favorites out there still doesn't top High Beam from Walnut River, but I love this one. So all around, it is definitely citrusy. That's the delicious part. So if you like citrusy IPAs, this one is definitely one for you guys to try.
And it's 7.7.
Yeah, 7.7.
That's not bad. I've got the Amber Alt Style Ale from Alaskan Brewing Company. We had something on them a couple of weeks ago.
Yeah.
And this is really, really good. For an Amber, it's really easy drinking. Just a nice, it says smooth, flavorful, and balanced. And I would say that's fair.
Yeah.
A disappointing 5.3, but only compared to your 7.7. So what do you got?
I'm not starting out with what I thought I was going to.
Okay.
I stopped at the liquor store and bought some 90 shilling because I was talking about staples. Like I love 90 shilling just to like sit and like I'm going to drink for a while.
Yeah.
Like I just like 90 shilling a lot for that. And I was walking out the door and I was like, I don't know, I think I feel like a sour today. And so, but the only one that I had is the one I brought. It's the Guavatus from Free State.
Nice.
Frankly, it's a little fruity for me. And there's a little too much like a basic straight up sour. But that's the one I had. So that's the one I brought. And after I finish this one, then I'll be moving on to my 90 shillings after that.
That was a great thing you did though, leaving there, picking up a sour. I love sours.
Oh, yeah.
I'm obsessed
You're
with
John's
them.
new best friend.
Oh man. Well, I heard you on one of the other podcasts, you had a Paradox sour. And we were out in Colorado fly fishing one time with my daughter, my son-in-law, and driving down the highway through Divide, Colorado.
Right.
And I'm like, hey, there's a bar. Let's stop. And it was Paradox. And yeah, that was a great afternoon. That was just a great afternoon.
That really was maybe the beer with the most going on out of anything I've ever tasted. I mean, it had this a list of everything, and you could taste all of it. That was really,
it was
good.
Yeah, it was super good. And they're like just sours.
Yeah.
I think that's kind of, I have some vague memories of that the rest of that day, but because we were there for a while, but it was, they had just all kinds of different sours and it was just a real small place.
Okay.
But super good.
Huh?
Interesting little town, great fly fishing right up there. So yeah, nothing wrong with Paradox. That's for sure.
Yeah. I'm going to reach out to them, see if we can't get them to send us some beer.
Did we ever get beer?
No, never got it. Never got it. I'll reach out to the guy again.
So disappointed.
So there's your Paradox plug.
That's awesome.
To push
I
with
love
them.
That. Yeah. We talked about you on 2 podcasts.
That's
Free
right.
advertising. We don't have any show sponsors, but the one way to be like the unofficial show sponsor is to give John and I beer, and then we'll talk about you for at least 10 minutes.
Yeah.
That's longer than any other normal ad.
I'll peddle whatever you want me to peddle.
Yeah.
Just give me free beer.
As long as there's an IPA in there, I'm good.
And I do like your Delicious IPA. Those are really, really good as well.
Yeah.
I like those a lot.
Mm-hmm. It's it's something I don't drink all the time, but every now and then I'm just like, yeah, that's what I need.
Yeah.
Like today, I saw it and I just got stuck on it. I'm like, I have to have this now.
Yep. Yeah. I got a lecture from one of my kids about my poor beer choices in life, which was kind of an interesting twist in life. But I had been a Bud Light drinker forever. And then both of my my daughters ended up out in Colorado. One's up near Fort Collins and the other one's down by Colorado Springs. And so they both are in great beer towns.
Yeah.
And I would always go up there and, hey, you got any Bud Light? And finally one of my daughters sat me down like, Dad, you're making bad beer choices in your life. And so I had to think about it a little bit. And I finally agreed, maybe there's some other stuff. And so started getting into the craft beer stuff a little bit. And I think the IPAs were kind of my first stop.
Yeah.
And now I've gone through, I think, most of them, but really like sours. Got introduced to those out in North Carolina. And so that was, I've been kind of on a sour kick for a while now.
Yeah. And we've talked about that in the past. When I was in high school, I worked for a beer store in New York. And at that point, if you wanted a good beer, you were getting an import.
Right.
And then when I came back after college, I went there and managed it for a while, and everything had changed.
Yeah.
All of a sudden, all these microbrews started popping up, and a lot of them were from Colorado to begin with. And it wasn't 2 years until I think we brew the best beer in the world in America now. Honestly, I don't even think it's very close.
Yeah, hands down.
It's good. No question.
America.
America. And there's lots of great beers right here. Like, Walnut does a great job. Wichita Brewing Company does a great job. They worked with us on a couple of events and stuff, and they've got some really good beers.
Yeah.
So
yeah, it's crazy. Like in the Wichita area, there was no breweries, like, I don't know, 8 years ago, probably less than 8 years ago. And now all of a sudden there's 10 of them, 12 of them. I don't know. There's a lot, either Wichita or in like the larger metro area, like El Dorado and whatnot, but just breweries everywhere.
And good
It's
ones.
Nuts. Yeah.
Good stuff going on. Yeah. Absolutely.
All right. So Kurt, tell us a little bit about BHA. Give us what you do there, how you got involved, all of it.
Sure. Okay. Well, it's an organization that not a lot of people know about in Kansas. We're still growing. Thanks to you guys. We are on a good trajectory. That's for sure. But it is a new group. It's a conservation group, and you can think of like Ducks Unlimited, Pheasants Forever, all those sorts of the Rocky Mountain Elk Foundation. All those are different conservation groups and that sort of thing. But BHA, Backcountry Hunters and Anglers, started in 2004 with 7 people that got together around a campfire drinking some beers because they recognized a problem. They're up in Oregon. They hunt, they fish, all that kind of stuff up in the mountains, and their public land where they went to do those things was being sold off, taken away, that sort of thing. And they were losing their ability to go hunting and fishing. And so they got together to try to figure out how to have an impact on that issue. And the result of that campfire and beers was the organization called Backcountry Hunters and Anglers. And that's really the kind of the big overall mission of BHA, is to be the voice for our wild public lands, public waters, and wildlife. And that's our big kind of overriding theme, is that's what we try to do all the time, is protect and preserve that stuff. And so we kind of break it down into 3 different areas that we kind of work on. It's the protecting and preserving of the wild lands, wild places. All of that is public. We all own it. That's the public land owner shirt. That's something that most people don't think about, is that we own that stuff. If it's a public land, if it's a state park or a city park, we're the city, in America, in good old America, wrap it in the flag, that's us. We're the government. We own that. And so city park, state park, national forest, whatever it is, we're the owners of that. And we need to make sure that it gets taken care of. And so that's what we do, is try to preserve and protect the lands, the waters, and the wildlife that are there. Another thing that we work very hard on is access to those lands and waters, because there's a lot of places where we have public lands that you can't get to. Imagine if you had a piece of property someplace, you own it and you can't get to it. And that's the situation that we are in as U.S. citizens, is we own a lot of land that we can't even get to. And that's not right.
So explain that. How does that come about?
And it's like a lot of things. It's kind of confusing and convoluted and confusing. But when America expanded to the West, kind of a history lesson here, as the states came in kind of to the West, part of the land within the state was given or was held on to by the U.S. government in some cases, and in some cases it was given to the state. And it ended up being, because they had so much expansion going on so fast, that they had to figure out an easy way to do it. And so the answer at that point in time, just for ease, was, and I don't know if you guys know about sections and townships and real estate law and all that kind of stuff, but a 1 by 1 mile is a section.
Yep.
And those are set up in grids of like 36, 6 by 6. And so sections, I forget what the numbers were, 6 and 16 or something like that, would be reserved to the state. And the states got those, and then these were held by the federal government, all that sorts of thing. But it ended up, and that was just for ease of vast lands being transferred all at once. And it was just happening so fast, it was just easier just to do it with a number. The result of that is there are isolated pockets of land here and there all over the place that have private ownership all the way around them that don't let people in. And so, I mean, you can see how that happens.
Yeah.
It just happens over time. And so it ends up, I forget the number now off the top of my head. I want to say it's like almost 10 million acres of land that are out there that we don't have access to, that we own.
That's crazy.
Yeah.
Because I thought, like, if you, as like a private citizen, you bought land, you have the right to like an easement to cross someone else's property to be able to get to it.
Not necessarily.
Not necessarily?
No.
Okay.
No, ingress and egress is not necessarily in all cases.
Okay.
Like residential areas, absolutely.
Yeah.
Like that's built into the whole deal. That was not built in when they were doing this vast expansion of land.
Well, that's problematic then.
Yeah, they didn't think about that. They're just trying to get it all cranked out as fast as they can back in that time. And so, so there's a lot of land that we just don't have access to. We own it, and we can't do anything with it as the public, even though we own it, which is kind of crazy to think about. And so there's stuff like that, and I can't even remember where we were starting and going with that.
But that tied that up nicely.
But
is there for that specific issue? Is there a fix? Is there something that is being talked about that might remedy that? Are we looking at buying specific areas of land that will allow people access to those?
That's part of one of the things that we were going to talk about. The Land and Water Conservation Fund kind of ties into that.
Okay.
So we can get to that. But the thing that we were talking about earlier, though, we were talking about kind of the three big purposes of BHA: to preserve and protect the lands and waters and wildlife. Access is the second thing that we work on a lot, and trying to do what we can to make sure that when you get access to whatever it is, land or water, that there's the opportunity to do what you want to do there. Within the rules, of course, and all that kind of stuff. But access and opportunity is the other one. And then fair chase is how we described the last one. Basically, that's kind of ethics and how you conduct yourself and what you do, doing the right things while you're there. If you're hunting, knowing what you're doing with a gun or a bow, or knowing how to catch and release a fish, if that's the rules there, whatever it may be, but just acting ethically once you get there. That's the other thing that we work on a lot. So that's kind of the overall big scheme of what BHA does. To kind of bring it to Kansas, because that's kind of the American view of what's going on. In Kansas, we've got like almost no federal lands. We are 49th out of the 50 states.
I didn't realize it was that bad.
Yeah, it's really bad. And most of the federally owned land is down in the extreme southwest corner. There's the Cimarron National Grassland down there. That came about really as a result of the Great Depression. And that's how that became federal land, because there was, the Dust Bowl came through and wiped out pretty much all the farmers. And so the federal government would come in and buy what they could from the landowners and give them what they could for the land, or get it back from the bank or whatever. And they end up with these lands down there. And so that ended up becoming the Cimarron National Grasslands. And that's how that came about. But that's a big piece of federal land in the state that really is not visited very often. It's been years since I've been down there. I lived in Garden City for a while and went down there and hunted and stuff down there for a while, and had a incredible evening watching the sun go down. I can still remember that, and that's been a long time ago. But man, I watched the sun go down out there, and it was just spectacular. It was just beautiful. So there's that. The reservoirs, some of those have federal land around them. with the Corps of Engineers and that sort of thing.
Yeah.
So that's some of the other federal land that's around. But yeah, we're 49th out of the 50 states.
Wow.
So, but and that's a tough spot to be in. The thing that we do have to make up for that sort of is our walk-in hunter access program, which is one of the best ones in the nation. Over 1 million acres. And that's, I should back up a step. That's a situation where the state leases hunting ground from farmers, gives them a little bit of money, a little income to just let people come and hunt on their land. You can't drive on it. There's all kinds of rules that you have to follow. But you don't have to go knock on the door as a hunter. You don't have to go knock on a door and ask for permission. You can just go. So it functions much like a public land.
Which that's awesome, because if it wasn't for that, I would rarely get out hunting.
Yeah.
Because it's honestly, it's hard. Sometimes it's hard to find someone who's a private citizen in the area where it's decent hunting that you can get permission on versus walk-in hunting. You just go, you pull up the map and Kansas, I mean, it's everywhere.
Yeah.
You're just like, I'm just going to go out here and then hop over to that spot. And it's amazing what you can do there.
I wonder how much, if any of that, people's resistance to letting other people on their property is liability. Like if I let you come and you shoot your buddy, am I then in some way liable for that?
Yeah, and I mean from the landowner perspective, that's a great reason to put your land in walk-in hunting, because then it's covered. Absolutely, there's no issues about that. That's just gone. Yeah. But the biggest problem, I mean, from the hunter's perspective, is finding an owner anymore. There are so many big corporate farms, and you don't know who to ask for permission from.
Yeah.
And so that's like the biggest problem of all, is you can't find anybody to talk to. And I grew up in a real small town. There was nothing but family farms around, and everybody knew somebody that owned a farm, and you could go hunting anytime you wanted and all that kind of stuff. And it was great. It's just not that way anymore. And it's just going to get worse. That's the business trend. It seems to be at this point anyways, that corporate farms are going to get bigger and bigger. And family farms, unfortunately, are going to get smaller, fewer and fewer in number. And that's a problem.
Yeah. And there's lots of reasons for that. But one that I've always heard, and I've heard people complain about it for years now, is someone's owned a farm their entire life, or, they got it from their parents and their parents' parents. But now there's this, you can call it whatever you want, a death tax that they just can't pay. So here comes this corporation saying, hey, well, we'll buy it up, and, maybe they continue to work it, but then it's a giant conglomeration that owns it and has no ties to the community, they're just trying to make a profit, basically.
Right.
So now I don't know how you fix that. I'm not smart enough for that, but it's definitely concerning.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, there's lots of reasons. That's one of them. No, there's no question about that. So yeah, the inheritance issue is always an issue.
Sometimes I don't think it's always just the death tax, but it's just the planning. People don't do any planning, and then even if there is no government tax that you're going to have to pay upon inheritance of it, it's just not knowing, okay, well, I had 6 kids and they have all these kids, and how's the family going to split this up and do this or that with it? And it just becomes an issue, and you have to do some estate planning.
Right.
Like we've done that here at Walton's. My dad's hopefully nowhere near kicking the bucket, but it's one of those things where you just, if you own something that it has some sort of value to it, do some planning so that if something does happen,
fair point,
you have a way to continue on with what you've been doing.
Sure.
Yeah. And I'm retired attorney, did a little bit of estate planning and stuff, just enough probably to get myself in trouble by saying anything at all. So this is not advice.
We'll put a disclaimer at the bottom of the screen for those watching on YouTube.
But it's the old deal also. You need to plan, you need to do all that kind of stuff. You need to do all that work. And then hopefully all of your plans can happen. Right. Perhaps there is no one who wants to take over after you're gone. If you're the person that's running the farm and you set up the plan and all that kind of stuff, and then you get to, now you're in the ground and the next folks are supposed to take over, and then all of a sudden they decide, nope, I hear the beach calling or whatever the case may be, and they're gone. There's lots of lots of reasons that happens. That's for sure. There's no question about that, and that is a problem. But yeah, it's from the hunter's perspective, it creates issues with us because we can't go hunting if we can't get permission. Yep, if you want to be a good ethical hunter and make certain that you have permission everywhere you go, but you don't know who to ask that permission of, and thus the walk-in system. And it's a great one. The one that we have here in Kansas, we're unfortunate on the percentage of public land ownership. We are very fortunate on the other side to have the walk-in hunter program, because it's just, I mean, there's most of the states in America wish they had our system, and they come from all over to hunt our system. Yeah. So it's a big economic driver here, actually. It brings in far more money than is spent with the lease up of the lands.
I won't give super exact details because I don't remember it entirely, but my older brother, he works in the oil industry. He's a petroleum engineer and has worked for a few different companies over the years. But one of the companies he used to work for, they rented out like someone. This is before like Airbnb and VRBO. They like rented out somebody's house, basically in that style of things, like an Airbnb, for like a month. I think it was over a month. And they just brought in clients and vendors and customers and had them in for hunts. And my dad and I went up and hunted with my brother Cole. We went out and hunted pheasant for 2-3 days. It was a blast. And there were other guys there that were deer hunting. And they're like, yep, I've been up in the stand every day for a week and a half. And they're like, yep, I still got another 3 or 4 days here. And it's insane. Like, on one hand, yeah, you have people just generically as a private citizen coming in themselves, but you have a lot of corporations that then go, this is a sweet opportunity for me to wine and dine some of my customers and have some fun with it. And they spend a lot of money here doing stuff like that. I can't even, back then, I'm sure it was still big, but now I can't even imagine what it would be like with as prevalent as Airbnb and VRBO is just saying, hey, let's just take this house and go do walk-in hunting. You still hire like a guide or something to go walk you around a lot of times when you're bringing somebody in from all across the U.S.
Sure, spending all that money,
to see all those people from all around the country coming to Kansas just to hunt, like that's their vacation, and they're like, this is amazing.
Yep.
When I used to work in customer service, we'd get calls all the time from people in Minnesota, everywhere up there, be like, oh, I want to make it down to Kansas. You guys have huge bucks down there. So, I mean, it's a known thing. And you go too much further than us, too much further south, and they get real small real fast. Yeah. I mean, a Texas deer is not like a Kansas deer. They're significantly smaller down there.
Absolutely. That is absolutely right. Yeah. And yeah, the renting out of the farmhouses or the lodges in small towns or whatever, that's big. I mean, my wife and I do that. We have 3 times a year during the bird hunting season, where we rent this little farmhouse that we got together. We knew the farmer through some things, and he decided to rent out his house. And so we have family members come in or friends or whatever, and we get up there and we had a little bit on the land that guy has, but mainly it's like so that we can get up and do all the walk-in hunting that's in that area. Yeah. And it's just great. The farmers like it. They get a little extra cash because they've got some old farmhouse that they renovated and made into a really nice place to stay. And it's a great deal. And we do that, like I said, 3 times a year. We do that for 5 days at a time. And it's great. You can bring folks in. Maybe we'll bring you guys. I don't know. But it's a lot of fun, and it's a great time. You can go out and, I mean, you can hunt all day and then pull into the farmhouse. It sounds crazy, but clean the birds, get the dogs taken care of, eat a antelope steak or whatever you brought with you, and then jump in the hot tub. It's not a bad evening, I got to tell you.
That sounds pretty good. And we are going to get to that antelope. But before we do that, and before we talk about one other thing, talk to us about fair chase, what that entails for you and why it's so important.
Thank you. It is that's like a vital thing to us, because we always talk, seems like we always talk about public lands and waters, but we also need to talk about public wildlife as well. We have a completely different system in America than is available than most any place else in the world. And it goes clear back to the time when the Constitution was written. We tried to make a break from the laws that existed in Europe. We wanted something different. And in Europe, the game belongs to whoever's land it's on at the time. And so the king owned the land, so it was the king's deer, thus Robin Hood and all of that sort of thing, getting a deer and feeding it to the poor people and all that kind of stuff. In America, they said, no, we're not going to do that. The game here belongs to everyone. This is a democracy. The game belongs to everyone. There is not going to be any of the king's game. That's not the way it is here. And so to kind of follow through that and to bring that into today's life, like one of the things that we understand that it exists, we don't pursue that option, is what's called high fence hunting. And I think, it sounds like we know what that is. Maybe not everybody does, but it's like if a farmer would go in and like build a fence where, for example, deer couldn't jump over it, something like that, to pen in the deer. That is not something that we like to see, because those deer belong to everybody. Yeah. That's what the framers of our Constitution of good old America intended, and that's what they said, and that's what we're doing. And so fair chase means the game can go where they want. We can't tie them down so that somebody can shoot them, that kind of thing. We are not real high on like pen raised animals, like a lot of people raise pheasants or quail or whatever and do that. If other people want to do it, that's fine. We do not. We do the fair chase things where we don't raise them just to shoot them. And if other people want to do that, that's fine. And it's such a gray area because I'm fully aware, like I hunt birds a lot, and I have introduced people to bird hunting a lot. One of the easiest ways to do that is with pen raised birds. It just makes it easy, and it just
a great
does.
Starter system.
Yeah. And I get that. I totally get that. On the other hand, it's like, I'm not really sure that that's like an ethical thing. Maybe the person should also learn that you have to work really hard. If you want to take the life of an animal, you should have to work for it. Mm-hmm. That's a lesson that needs to be in there as well. So that's, and everything in life is like balanced between two things, it seems like. And that's in that particular case. So so fair chase involves, the freedom of the wildlife to roam as our constitutional forefathers intended, and to follow the rules. I mean, just like as a basic deal, like one of the, and I think it was Aldo Leopold, maybe it's Jim Posowitz, I can't remember, one of the great outdoor writers said that ethics is what you do in the field when no one sees you.
That's a great point.
Yeah. And so that's what because we're backcountry hunters and anglers, there's generally speaking not somebody looking over your shoulder when we're out doing our stuff. And so it's, do you do what's appropriate when you're out in the back, when you're out, where nobody's going to see you? Do you do it the right way, or do you do it the wrong way, the easy way? So that's kind of the stuff that we promote.
So I've made a beer change. I am going to the Stella Artois Solstice Lager. Hadn't had this one yet. Wish I'd gone with regular Stella. It's got a strange something in it.
You're a pansy.
or it's a summer beer.
Yeah, I guess
Solstice Lager.
Okay.
Yeah, probably a summer thing. But yeah, I've made my switch over to the 90 shilling, and I'm pretty happy about that.
Went to the bullpen. That's a good one though.
Yeah, it is.
Even I like the 90 shilling.
Yeah.
So talking about the Great American Outdoor Act. And I knew we were going to talk about this going into it. So I was looking up some stuff on Wednesday. And obviously, being an outdoorsman and somebody who wants people to experience nature, I have zero problem with the main portion of it. I like it. It needs to happen. I find it a little distressing and almost a little embarrassing that we have fallen $20 billion behind on repairs and maintenance needed on our national parks or national land. That shouldn't be happening.
Right.
What I read at the very bottom was a word that always concerns me when I see it in something from our government, and that is the word permanent. And it's in regards to the Land Water Conservation Fund. So it's LWCF. And just quickly for anyone who doesn't know about this, and please step in if I'm wrong at all, don't worry about breaking it. The LWCF is an organization. It gets money from offshore drilling. It takes a very small percentage of that, and it uses that to acquire new federal land.
You're batting about 250, so
Okay.
go ahead. You're lucky you're not a baseball player. Go ahead.
No. So that, my understanding is that it's acquiring new land. I'm not aware of it doing anything beyond that.
I can fix that.
Does it already? Okay.
I can fix that. Okay, so let's see where to start. You said it was an organization. First of all, it's not an organization. It's a fund of money in the government.
Okay.
Back in 1964 or 65, something like that, the LWCF was set up. Offshore drilling was coming around at that point in time. And I mean, if you think about it, offshore oil drilling, there's a pool of oil out there under the ocean. It's in American waters. It's ours as American people. It's ours. And so we enter into a contract with an oil company to extract that oil from our land. They get a percentage of it. We get a percentage of it because we're the owners, just like any other oil well. They recognize that that's a resource of the American people. It's owned by the American people. So let's take that money that the American government gets out of that and use it to acquire another resource or to help out another resource for the American people. And that was kind of the general thought behind it. And specifically, it was for the purpose. And I love this. It's like they actually thought ahead. This is really cool. And it was, they set that money aside to be used to help the health and vitality of the American citizens, which is super cool. I mean, we're taking oil out from under the ocean. It's a resource of ours. And in 1964, they realized, hey, let's help out the health of America. Let's make us healthier, more vibrant people. And so they set that up that way, and that was the purpose of that money, was the health and vitality of the American citizenry. And it's set up not just to buy federal lands. That is a common theme that is pushed by some senators. I'll say it that way. That is not specifically what the deal is. Those funds are set aside 40% for federal purposes, 40% for state purposes, and 20% for the administration at that time to do what, at their discretion, to do what they wish. And so, I like to bring stuff down to like our level, like here in Kansas. If we want to bring it down to even smaller terms, the LWCF has literally done projects in every county, in every state in America. And most of that, in that particular instance, is done through the state fund, the 40% that goes to the state. Okay. In Kansas, you go to any of the little tiny small towns, and they've got a municipal swimming pool. That was paid for in large part by LWCF funds. That comes out of that 40% that goes to the state. It's a state matching fund or something like that. Excuse me. So they're trying. The thought behind that was like swimming pools, golf courses, tennis courts, all that kind of stuff in the rural. Oh my gosh, I almost lost beer.
Almost had a party foul.
Oh my God. Yeah, we're going to have to bring out the bottle.
Oh God, no. Of the Jepson's Malort.
But so all of those outdoor recreation opportunities in small towns are supported by the LWCF in an attempt to improve rural life, basically. We're talking about kids that don't want to stay on the farms and all that kind of stuff. Sort of along those lines, help keep kids in rural areas, make outdoor recreation options available to them. So the golf courses, a lot of times in small towns, tennis courts, swimming pools, all that kind of stuff are paid for in large measure out of the LWCF. And so sometimes they have to purchase land to do that. In Wichita, Sedgwick County, there have been, the last map that I saw, there was 55 projects that have been done in Wichita, in Sedgwick County, that were paid for by LWCF funds to the tune of $5 million. So $100,000 every year is coming to Sedgwick County out of the LWCF state funds. So, I mean, that's a big deal. That's a big deal. And people don't know about it. It's just this law that's kind of been there, and it's just been doing good things, and nobody really hears about it, and nobody really talks about it. It just kind of keeps cranking the work out. And the thing that makes, and we are very, very pumped about the passage of the Great American Outdoors Act because of several reasons. One, I just talked about all the great things that the LWCF has done. It has done that with half of the money that it's supposed to have.
Yeah, I saw that.
In 55 years of existence, there's been 2 years where all of the money that was supposed to go into it got into it. You want to know where that backlog came from? Money that didn't get there to pay for the stuff. That's a big chunk of it.
Okay.
And a lot of people don't like to talk about that because they didn't get the job done earlier.
So that is the maintenance would have fallen under the LWCF?
Some of it, and I'm not saying all of it would have. Some of it would have,
portion
though.
of?
Absolutely, some of it would have.
And so that's from senators basically when they're passing a budget, just agreeing that they're going to appropriate that money somewhere else?
Yeah. And so, so literally like half of the money that was supposed to be there has finally made it there, made it there over the years. And one way to, I kind of like to look at it this way. It's like in 2 years, all of the money got there that was supposed to go there. 2 years out of 55. Again, if you're a baseball player and you're up at the plate, your batting average is 036. I did the math on it. Your batting average, it's not like 360. It's not 36 is your batting average. That's your batting average for doing what the law said you were supposed to do and put all of that money in that fund to take care of that stuff.
That's bad.
That is bad.
And so when I see senators, representatives up there talking about how, oh, we've got all this backlog, and oh, we can't do this, and oh, we can't do that, and it all, for whatever reason, probably because I'm a parent, it always strikes me as like this parent yelling at the kid to go clean their room while the parent's standing in their own room and it's a mess. Yeah. It's like you don't have a good foundation upon which to criticize that child for having a dirty room if you live in a dirty room yourself.
But it also, you can't say that it's bad for that parent to tell them to clean their room. Just because they're not taking care of what they need to take care of doesn't mean that that's bad advice.
I totally agree.
It's
a bad example, just not bad advice.
You're setting a bad example.
Yeah.
It's not a bad example.
Right.
So first, I love the fact that only 20% of it goes to administration. That is excellent for a government agency.
Mm-hmm.
And if they do,
it's a good law.
When they do fully fund this, I'd be real interested in year over year, see what happens with that. Because if it stays at 20%, that will eliminate one of my biggest problems with it, which is just bureaucratic sprawl.
Right.
Or it just keeps growing and growing and growing.
Right.
Well, and that's probably why they don't fully fund it every time, is because the government's like, well, we
need it over here.
Yeah, let's push it over this side.
Yeah. In 1964, they made a really good decision. Let's take this money from this resource and take care of this problem for America. And now you look at it and it's like, we got half the money. Obviously there's not a connection between that and COVID, but had that money been put where it was supposed to go, we would have more outdoor opportunities for people to go to when we're supposed to be outside social distancing. Yeah. There should have been a lot more opportunities created for people to go outside, and that was not done. And that's a failure in my mind. That is just an outright failure. And so there was an opportunity that wasn't cashed in on to take care of that problem. We've got people talk about the obesity epidemic that's going on in America too. This was enacted for the health and vitality of the American citizenry. Maybe we ought to be taking care of that at this point. It should have been taken care of all along. Let's encourage people to get outside and do things. So I think it's a great deal. The 40% that goes to the federal government is, some of that is earmarked for purchase of lands. That can be, like we were talking about earlier, easements to get access to those lands that we can't get to.
Yeah.
The senators and representatives that like to complain about, we don't properly manage our lands. Well, remember we talked about how there's all these little isolated parcels of land out there, here, there, and everywhere. That's hard to manage, especially when you can't even get there. How are you going to manage it if you can't get there? And so one of the efforts that they do is to try to consolidate like they try to do land swaps,
Right.
stuff like that. And sometimes you have to purchase some extra land to get that swap done. Like here in Kansas even, and this is not, I don't know, maybe it is an LWCF project, but it's at the state level. The legislature this past year was considering doing a land swap situation out at Byron Walker Wildlife Area out by Pratt. It makes perfect sense to do it. There was some bad communication at first. Then the farmers were sat down again, not sat down. They all met at a coffee shop. The current secretary for Wildlife and Parks is doing a really good job. He just went out and sat down and talked to people and explained what the situation was. After everybody understood what was going on, the local farmers, there's always a few exceptions, can't say everyone, but pretty much everyone was in agreement. It made sense to swap out some of the land that was in the state area at that point in time, make that owned by farmers. It was good farm ground and should have been farmed. There was some other that was very marginal cropland, and so they switched that over to the state area. And so that land swaps, and so you kind of take that process that makes sense and makes it easier and better, and apply that to the federal situation. It's going to make it easier to have access to that property, to manage it better, because it's going to be, hopefully at some point in time, like larger, more contiguous pieces of land instead of scattered sections here, there, and everywhere. And so that's another one of the reasons why they do that. And the people that get up in arms, I mean, I don't want the federal government to own me. I don't want to own everything in America.
Right.
I want family farms. I grew up with family farms. I think it's fantastic. I want that. Ranchers, all that kind of stuff. My dad was in the meat processing business forever. I knew ranchers all over the place. They're great people, love them to death. Not trying to put them out of business at all.
Right.
But yeah, if we can make some land swaps that make sense, get some easements to get access to things, that's kind of the purpose of that, is to make it easier to manage so that we can do a better job. I'm a wildlife manager or something. I'm an old retired guy. Make it easier to be managed, basically. And so that, I think that's one of the things that some people don't understand and don't talk about.
Yeah, for sure. Land swaps absolutely make sense. The one other thing, and this ties into what I've heard you guys do, I haven't been to one yet, but I will, is when you guys go and clean up some land yourself.
Absolutely.
One of the things that I was thinking of is, God, it feels like we need something to tie all Americans to each other. We've lost or are losing our connection to each other.
Absolutely.
And one of the things that I've heard bandied around for years is some form of civil service. Something that, I don't know if you do it coming out of college, before you go to college. And it doesn't have to be a military thing. I mean, that's just kind of naturally where you run to, but it doesn't have to be. It could easily be you get kids right out of high school, right out of college, and they go do land improvement projects. That's going to mix all different classes of people together, get them more comfortable with each other, let them know each other. The real problem is anytime a government wants to say you have to, I mean, I know I wouldn't have done it back then, and I certainly wouldn't do it right now. So there has to be some sort of benefit beyond the, hey, you're helping this country's natural resources. And I don't know what that is.
Yeah. And I got to be careful, because I could come back and do a whole nother podcast with you on that subject.
Nice.
I am serious about that, because it sounds like you and I track fairly closely. I'm probably even a stronger believer in what you're saying than you are, from the sounds of things. But yeah, so yeah, I think that would be a fantastic thing for America to do. I'm going to stop myself right there because I could go for quite a while on that. But yes, BHA does do that. And the darn COVID thing, we were really getting that rolling. The service projects and cleaning up places and improving places at the direction of wildlife managers and that sort of thing. We were really just getting that going. Because we're a new organization in Kansas. Yeah, BHA has been in existence since 2004, but we're in our second year here in Kansas. And so we had, it took us a little time to get a little traction with Wildlife and Parks before they really understood that, yeah, we will show up, and we'll show up with chainsaws, and we will do whatever you say, we'll get after it.
Right.
And we were really getting that going with them. We've just recently, we had just struck up a really good partnership with the Corps of Engineers to do a bunch of stuff around the reservoirs and do things with them. And then COVID hit and kind of just shut all of that down. We are trying to get that going again. We've got a one set, and now the date is escaping me. By the time this podcast comes out, it will be over with. It just came to me.
Okay.
So it will be over with, but we are trying to get those going again. We're doing it on a little smaller scale since it's the middle of the summer and it's brutal outside.
It is terrible.
Yeah.
And so we're doing just like a morning project of like fixing up some kiosks at trailheads and spreading gravel at trailheads for Corps of Engineers. And some stuff like that.
Yeah.
But yeah, like nationwide, BHA, like I think it's the Idaho chapter that has a big fence removal project. So they'll go out onto national forest areas and where there's old barbed wire that's fallen down and just basically in the way of things now. And it's not really a marker of any boundary, or it's not, separating fields or anything like that. And they'll go in and take out miles of barbed wire fences. And we did that up at Perry Lake. That was our first service project. We went in and they were trying to create a fire break. One, because they needed a fire break there. Two, because they wanted to show some of the local folks that you can make a fire break. This is how you do it. And just put it in their face. This is how you can protect your home by making a fire break. And they had an old railroad bed that was no longer being used. And the grade, the angle of the ground going up to the railroad bed was steep enough that they couldn't use their big equipment to come in and remove all the trees. And it was just solid with old cedar trees. And the only way to get in there and get them out was take chainsaws and go in there and get after it. And so BHA showed up and went after it and had a bunch of, we're a young organization as far as our members go. It's a crazy great statistic. I want to say it's like 75% of our members are under 40 years old, 45 maybe.
Yeah, that's actually very cool.
Yeah, for a conservation group, that's crazy. Conservation groups tend to be older folks, and we are definitely not that.
Is that BHA Kansas or is that all BHA?
National. But
wow.
I would say that is maybe even a higher percentage in Kansas. Yeah, I really believe it may be. I mean, I'm an old guy in Kansas BHA. I'm an old guy.
John, you'd be an old guy.
Yeah.
I wasn't going to say anything. But yeah, so anyway, we showed up, had that project up there at Perry Lake. And I think we got, I was on the fence removal crew. And so I was kind of keeping an eye on that stuff. We removed, I want to say 1.25 miles of like 5-strand barbed wire fence, which was a lot of work. And I think we got it was something like 1/4 or 1/2 mile or something like that of the railroad thing cleared out.
Wow.
So we got, and that was in one day. Yeah. And so that wasn't too bad. They wanted us to come back up there and we were getting another date set and everything went down the tubes. Yeah. So, but once we get the COVID stuff under control, we will be out there. And that's the biggest thing that BHA does. We pride ourselves on two things: being like John and drinking that beer down right away. and secondly, we like to think of ourselves as like the boots on the ground organization. We don't have a lot of money. We don't raise a lot of money. That's not our deal. We're not chasing money to do things like that with, but you need some dudes to show up with chainsaws. That's us.
Honestly, that's the one thing that I saw like from the get-go is the difference between you guys and some of the other groups that either we deal with or that we know of, is that you guys are very much involved.
Right.
Everything takes some amount of money to keep it running, but a lot of what you guys do, like, it does center around, we are doing something. We aren't just going to sit there and go, yep, I'm a part of this organization, and here's my yearly dues.
Yeah.
You guys do more local events and actual, like you said, boots on the ground type of stuff,
right,
than anybody else I've seen by far.
Yeah, and I think that's absolutely accurate, and I think that has become like our rallying cry. I can remember the guy that now is in charge of meeting with the Corps of Engineers guys and getting our events set up with them. he called me up and or sent me an email or something, and was like, hey, I want to talk to you about BHA sometime. I might become a member. So I met him for lunch or dinner or something downtown in Old Town, and we sat there and talked. And his big thing was, I belong to these organizations, but I'm a young guy. I want to do something. Yeah. I don't want to just sit around and go to a banquet once a year, and get stupid and spend too much money. I don't want to do that. That's not my deal.
Don't look at me, John. I'm not the old guy.
Not that any of us would do that.
It's the guy who spends too much money at the banquet.
I do spend too much money at the banquets,
but he wanted to do something. That was his deal. He wanted to do something, and he's like, I'm looking for an organization that gets out and does things. And I'm like, brother, you have come to the right place. And so, now he's in charge of setting up projects with the Corps of Engineers for us. Stuff like that. But the boots on the ground, when talking with legislatures, the term is shovel ready as opposed to boots on the ground. It's like they want to have projects that are shovel ready, like they're ready to go right now. And that's why really when we're talking about the Great American Outdoors Act, a whole nother way to look at it is it's an incredible jobs bill. Right now, we've got unemployment, at historic rates, and this Great American Outdoors Act puts a ton of money out there for jobs to be done that are just waiting to be done. You talk about the maintenance backlog; those jobs have been sitting there just waiting to be done, and now we've got unemployment at historic rates. Now we've got money to pay for that stuff. Let's get folks to work. I think it's a great jobs bill. There was a great jobs bill that came out of the recession in 2008. 2008. There was a good job bill that came out of that. You go back to the Great Depression, and you can argue whether it was a good thing or a bad thing, but
extended it a little bit,
or extended it, shortened it, whatever. Yep. But there was a ton of people that were put to work.
Sure.
And you got to give it that. Whether you agree with the outcome of it or not, there was people that went to work.
Yeah, it's not deniable.
Yeah. And so, it's in that respect, it's a great jobs bill every year. And so it's going to be a boon to the economy in that particular respect. So there's that part of it. But we're the guys that get out and do stuff, guys. Oh, my wife's going to shoot me for that. We are the people that that get out and get after it. And I think one of the things that's kind of interesting that has already shown up with backcountry hunters and anglers is that ethic, that thought process tends to kind of be regenerated. Already you can see that in our organization because that doesn't change. And I think it has to do somewhat with like the type of people that we are, because that's like what we do for fun. It's like we're backcountry hunters and anglers. Yeah. We don't, we're not in our shiny spangly bass boat most of the time, at the state lake. That's fine. If that's what you guys want to do, that's fine. Got no problem with that at all. Come join us because you're on a state lake and that's a public water. Yeah. And so we're helping you out. But we're guys that go back in the mountains. Like I'll hike, I don't care how far, like to get up to some, like my deal currently for fishing is like, I love like high alpine trout fishing.
Okay.
Like I want to go to the highest lake on the mountain that still has fish in it, and I want to catch fish there. And I don't care how far I have to hike. It doesn't matter. 6, 10, 8 miles. I don't care. I want to go catch fish there. It's a beautiful place. I can stand there and be in like one of the most beautiful places in the world. I own it. And if I follow the rules, I can stay there and catch fish. You can't do that in Europe. You can't do that.
Nope.
It's America where you can do that. And that's the greatness of our public lands. That's my deal. There's other guys that have other things that they like to do. I love to hunt public lands as well. I'm going all over the place, hopefully. COVID don't mess up my fall and winter like you have my summer. But I'm going all over the place to hunt on public lands. And one thing that people don't realize is, relatively speaking, it's cheap. It's cheap. Yep. Cheap. Like we buy a, what's it called? Something pass for the national parks. It's like $80.
Oh, yeah.
It's like America the Beautiful Act or America Beautiful. Yeah, 2 visits, it's paid for.
Yep.
Yeah, absolutely. Like we were talking about antelope.
Yep.
When my wife and I and nephew go antelope hunting in Wyoming, it costs us gas to get up there and our hunting tags.
That's it.
That's
Well,
it.
there's some startup cost, but
Yeah, but if you camp at a state lake, you can camp up there with the addition of bring some water. It's the same thing. You're camping, and you don't even have to pay a fee to camp. You just find a nice spot out on the prairie and pull over and set up your tent.
that's pretty awesome.
Yeah, you can't do that anywhere but America. I'm sorry, you just can't. And so, I mean, it's great. It's fairly inexpensive. Yeah, there's some startup costs if you don't go to the state lakes or wherever. If you don't go out to El Dorado or wherever and set up camp, yeah, there's some startup costs. Outside of that, you got your hunting tags and that's it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, I mean, America is wonderful. So, anyway.
So one of the nice things with BHA, specifically for you, is you've been all over the country, or at least all over most of the country.
Fair amount, yeah.
What's your favorite national park?
That's impossible to answer. Come on, man. That's impossible. No, it is because they're all so different. You know, I mean, I mean, just start out like I love Rocky Mountain National Park. I did a social media takeover thing on Instagram from a trip that we did up there 3 weeks ago. Usually my wife and I go up there, and this is a too long answer for your question, but my wife and I usually go up there for a week, get a couple of campsites, and just have family members just like come and go for the week. And it's just a great time. And again, COVID screwed it up. And so we had to like condense. So it was mainly just my wife and I for I think 5 days. And then my kids came up for a couple of days right at the end of it. But we just went crazy, just hiking around all over the place. We were talking earlier about Sky Pond and Black Lake and all that kind of stuff. And we made it up to Black that time. And so I love hiking Rocky Mountain National Park. And I am not like a person that likes to be around a lot of people. I don't dig big crowds at all. And so I like to get away from people. And a lot of people say, well, you can't get away from the crowd at Rocky Mountain National Park. There's always so many people, and Estes Park is always so crowded. And it's like, well, I don't go to Estes Park. First of all, I don't go to Estes Park unless I want an ice cream cone or something. But usually we go to Rocky Mountain National Park, and we get up early. Like we'll get up at 3 o'clock in the morning and get up, eat a quick breakfast, get out and get on the trail. There's nobody there.
Right.
Yeah. I mean, you have the most popular trails there are empty if you get there before sunrise, and you can walk along and it's beautiful. You can get up a little bit higher, watch the sun come up in the mountains. It's gorgeous. And then you're ahead of the crowds and you're literally going to have the mountains to yourself in a national park. And how great is that? Yeah. You know, that's crazy.
That's super cool.
And so it's not that hard to do. And then the great part is you get done with your hike early, you come back, you get back to the camp. If you're staying in the campground like we do, you get back to the campground early. Everybody else is still out on the trail. So now the campground is also deserted. And so it's a great way to get away from people by going to the third or fourth most visited national park in America, and you can still avoid the crowds. So
I like that plan.
It works good. So I love Rocky Mountain National Park. I love the Tetons, Yellowstone, Glacier. My wife and I have been to the Grand Canyon. We were talking about that a little bit. We have, been out there several times, been to the Grand Canyon several times. We've backpacked to the bottom.
You've done that?
Yeah.
Okay.
And we've done that 2 or 3 times.
Oh, wow.
And gone from the South Rim, from the North Rim, done some other stuff around other areas. Went down a couple of years ago. We got the opportunity to go to Havasupai Falls, I think it is, or Havasu Falls, something like that, which is actually part of an Indian reservation that then gets you into the national park. That may be the most beautiful place I've ever been in the world. And it was like stunningly beautiful. It's very hard to get into. Right now, you can't get into it because there's like I said, it's on an Indian reservation that you hike down through. It's like 11 miles through the desert to get down to this area. But then, it was awesome. And, but then we stayed down there for 3 or 4 days, and literally like the most beautiful scenery I've ever seen in the world. It's like, it doesn't look like it's on Earth. It's just amazing. And, but you have to like put in, like, I don't want to say a lottery, but it's sort of like a lottery to get the permits to go down there. We got lucky and hit that and got to go down there. So that was incredible. A few years ago, we went out to California and hit a bunch of the stuff out there. We hit Death Valley, which was surprisingly awesome.
Really?
Yeah, you wouldn't think it's Death Valley. It's hot and it's ugly and it's nothing. No, go there and you'll find out that there's a lot more going on there than you think.
Very cool.
Very cool. So we did that in Sequoia, which was awesome. We were there early in the season. That's the thing. If you go to national parks a little bit like on the shoulder seasons, like it's not quite warm or it's not quite cold,
much less people.
There's way fewer people. We were there early so that there was still a lot of snow and stuff in the Sequoia groves. And so we were hiking around out there. There's nobody there. It's just us and these monstrous trees. And it was amazing. So that was cool. Went to Kings Canyon National Park. That was amazing. Weirdly enough, we were the first people in the park after it opened that year, just because we happened to be the first ones in line that day. And they had, maybe it was in the campground. I can't remember. Campground, I guess it was. But anyway, that was spectacularly beautiful. Did the valley area in Yosemite one time to see went there in the springtime to see all the waterfalls going.
Yeah.
Spectacular.
I love Yosemite. That's
I'm supposed to be there right now. I'm supposed to be in the high country of Yosemite right now. We had a backpacking trip that we applied for and got a permit for. And I'm supposed to be out there backpacking in the Sierras right now. Thank you, COVID. So anyway, so that's amazing. I mean, there's just so many different things. I mean, and then there's the ones that you don't think about too much as far as the national parks go. Petrified Forest out in Arizona, New Mexico. It's out there on the line someplace. If you get there and kind of start looking around, it's amazing.
Right.
I mean, it's really cool seeing that stuff and thinking about how old those trees are, trees that have now become rocks and stuff like that. And it's just crazy thinking about that. Arches National Park, Canyonlands by Moab. Think about two national parks, one on one side of the highway, one on the other side of the highway. That's kind of crazy just to think about that. And they're both amazing. It's like, what do you want to do? As far as what's your favorite one, it's like, what do you want to do? Bryce Canyon
love Bryce.
Is beautiful. Just for like to sit back and look at a visual picture, it's beautiful. Zion is amazing.
Dramatic. Zion's very even just driving through, you come out that one tunnel and there's that wall. Yeah. And you just realize how small you are. You're like, oh, yeah, that's humbling would almost be.
Yeah. And honestly, I think that's like one of the greatest things, like what you just said right there is one of the greatest things that you can, like as a person, understand when you get out into nature and get out, national parks, nature, whatever. If you can understand that, like understanding your place in the universe, it's like we're this tiny little speck. We got to do our job while we're here, and we're supposed to do this and we're supposed to do that. We're a tiny little speck. And it is humbling. And then you get out in nature and you get around big animals and you realize, we're not the top of the food chain, and that's okay. We're part of the food chain. and
we've kind of stepped outside it for the most part. For the most part, we've stepped outside.
Until you get out in the wilderness. That might be true.
Yes, absolutely. When you go into...
It depends on how big of a gun you brought and how much ammo you brought.
Sometimes that happens.
If you're in an area and there's grizzlies, if you're in the ocean, there's great whites. You're in the food chain.
I think great whites are a myth. I don't think they really exist.
Oh man. John, we were talking the other day. You mentioned the on the Meat Eater podcast, the Meat Tree episode, which is fantastic. Yep. And I can't remember whether it's part of that podcast, that particular episode, or another one where same guy, Steve Ranella, was talking about he's up in Alaska and he and his brother were out in the water getting something. I forget what it was, sea cucumbers or something like that. And he hears a bunch of screaming, and his brother went one way, he went the other way. He hears a bunch of screaming on the boat in between them. He pops up and he looks over and there's great whites like circling his brother. And
That's not that podcast.
Yeah, and it's just like, oh my gosh, yeah. So yeah, apparently they do exist. Maybe you don't want to know that if you go to the ocean often.
No, I'm just poking and prodding John because he thinks that great whites are probably the number one cause of death in America.
So my brother made me watch Jaws when I was 4 years old.
Oh man,
I've gotten out of lakes, rivers, swimming pools, all sorts of things quickly because I feel like a great white is chasing me. It's
I had no
it's
idea.
a legitimate phobia, but I'm also like obsessed with them.
Oh,
They're
yeah.
the most amazing creatures ever. But all right, so
Okay.
taking it away from just the visiting national parks.
Yep.
What is your favorite thing? Now, I know you're a bird guy. So what's your favorite big game to go after in the States?
Favorite big game in Kansas?
No.
In this area, just in America?
Yeah,
oh my gosh. Wow.
My mom would have an easier time with these questions if I asked her who her favorite child was. Really?
Well, it's like, oh,
You're laboring over
I am in labor, man. Oh, thank God there wasn't morning sickness too that came along with this.
Wow.
Wow. And it's hard because I really, really, really enjoy going to the mountains. I like going to Colorado in September and being up high, like in the really high country, like timberline or playing timberline in September. And to do that, you're archery hunting for elk primarily. I'm doing that this year. And that is just like really, really special because of the physical surroundings.
Sure.
I mean, it's beautiful. The animals are out and about. They're doing their thing. They're either getting ready for winter or they're breeding but I mean, there's a lot of mojo going on out in the woods in September. And it's just a fun time to be out there. So that's fantastic.
I hate to say this, but you might hate me now, but I'm one of the guys that loves going to the mountains in the middle of September. And then I'm usually the most hated person out there because that's when we go ATV ride every year. And there is always a ton of elk hunting, archery season. They are going at it.
Yeah.
And I mean, it's one of those things that's hard to figure out what's right, what's wrong, but we're sticking to the ATV trails. We're going around, but still the ATVs make noise.
Sure.
And there's guys that hunt like right on the path.
Right.
And they're like, why are you doing this? And it's like, dude, if you want to get something, you need to hike off a little bit. So we do, when we see anything at all, whether it's wildlife or we just see, okay, there's signs of someone being here, we try to go slow. We don't make a big racket, but still, I think that is one of the best times to be in the Rockies. It's just for a different reason. I'm going out there ATV riding and making all the archery and elk hunters mad. But
well, I don't hate you. I got to say that, but only because I don't hunt where ATVs can go.
Yeah.
I mean, I specifically make that choice. Like I work harder. Backcountry hunters and anglers. Sure. I work a little harder so that I don't have to do that. Now, that's not to say that I have my mountain all to myself, because Lord knows there's plenty of backcountry hunters and anglers out there. Thank goodness, and darn at the same time. Yeah. But I mean, because I go to what is federally designated as a wilderness area. Which means that there is nothing mechanical allowed. No mechanical means of transportation are allowed. So there's no wheels. No motors, nothing like that can enter into this area. And so if you're not walking or on horseback, you can't go in there. And so I don't have to put up with you darn ATV.
Hey, and I'm totally good with that.
But there are still plenty of hikers. There's, I was really close to, it was late. I remember a few years ago, we were on an elk hunt up there, and it was late in the season. I was pretty much played out at that point, and I was ready to shoot. I had a tag that I could either shoot a bull or a cow elk, and I was like, if I can take home a cow, I'm good with that. That's great meat in the freezer. I'll go to Walton's and get some great seasonings and make some great stuff, and it'll be awesome.
Thank you.
You're welcome. And I mean, I was very close to closing a deal on some cows, and 2 hikers, and I was close to a trail, but it was all going to happen. I mean, it was looking really good. And 2 hikers come down the trail, and they are talking extremely loud. I mean, they're all but like yelling, and I couldn't figure out what the heck they were doing. And there goes elk, they're gone. And so I was just kind of sitting there with my head in my hands, like, yep, that's the way this hunt has gone right there. and so these 2 guys come along, and I'm sitting down there kind of in the weeds hiding, and I stood up and I was like, hey guys, and they're like, oh, are you hunting? And I was like, well, I was, and I did end up getting a little fun out of the situation, because they're like, well, we're really scared of bears, so we talk really loud when we're on the trail. and I was like, well, that's a good thing. That's a good way to make sure that you don't run into any bears, is talking loud. So that's great. And luckily this was also honest. And I said, and by the way, that was a good move that you made, because like yesterday we had a bear like about 100 yards up this trail from us, and their eyes were like, but it was absolutely true. My wife and I were going off to a different area to hunt. We were on that same trail, and actually like snuck past. We didn't see it, but like we were moving quiet. It's before sun up, all that kind of, you could see, because I could see the bear. But I didn't see it in the weeds right beside the trail. And we're walking into the wind, we're being quiet, all this stuff you need to do. And so we're going up to this area, but we walk along, and all of a sudden, like, this bear just comes out like right behind me. And we had literally like walked past it, and it just smelled us after we got downwind of it, took off running like crazy. It was a beautiful bear. But it had to have been like, I don't know, 6 or 8 feet from me.
Jeez.
And so it was an honest statement that I made, but I did have some fun telling those guys, yeah, good plan, because they're here.
Yeah. That's crazy.
Now, we've talked about Ronella in the past. Do you know who Adam Greentree is?
I do not.
So he's a Australian hunter. So if you follow him on Instagram, you're going to see some weird stuff. They do weird hunts down in Australia. They hunt house cats with bows.
Okay.
So they brought house cats down there to manage Australia, if you know.
It's a different place.
Right, but it's also folly after folly after folly. It's bringing this to kill this. Okay, that got out of control. Bringing this to kill this. And they just, for a long time, they're better now, but they kept bringing in non-indigenous animals to hunt. The last thing they brought in, and house cats was one of their most devastating. So they do, I don't know if it's still going on, but even up to a couple of years ago, they would get paid for house cat, and they're not house cats at that point. They're feral. Cats, right. But he documented a encounter he had with a grizzly in Colorado, and the Colorado Wild Game and Fish and Wild Game fought him on it. They're like, nope, that's not in Colorado. He's like, oh no, it definitely is. They're like, no, it's not, because they didn't want to deal with the fact that they got grizzlies back in Colorado. Right. So apparently they're back there now.
Oh no, I don't doubt that any. I mean, hey, there's now bears in Kansas. Yep. I don't know if you guys are aware of that. Down in southeast Kansas, we've got black bears now that have moved up from the Ozarks in the mountains and stuff that are down there. So, I mean, animals move around. Sure. And they don't really understand like state boundaries and stuff like that.
Whoa. I'm from Oklahoma.
Exactly. I'm an Oklahoma bear. I can't go to Kansas. It doesn't really work that way.
Have you ever seen or heard of or have good evidence of a mountain lion in this general area?
In the state of Kansas?
Around the Wichita area.
Oh, Wichita itself. I have a friend who absolutely swears he saw one down on, what's that highway, 160?
Okay.
That goes across the state down in the southern part of the state. I think it's 160 or 166, something like that. He saw one down there, and he's a hunter, fisherman. He knows what he's talking about. He knows the difference between a bobcat and a mountain lion. Yeah. At the same time, I got to say, so I don't know. I haven't seen one here. I've seen one in the mountains. I've not seen one here. But telling a little story on my wife, sorry, dear, on how easy it is to like be fooled, even if you know, like, because my wife, all the stuff we've talked about that I have done, it should have been we have done, because my wife pretty much goes everywhere with me. When, you know, she was 2 steps in front of me when that bear came out behind me, that sort of thing. So she's always there with me. And we were antelope hunting up in Wyoming, which, by the way, is another one of my favorite things to do because of the social aspect of it. It's a great time. It's so much fun. But we were antelope hunting up there, and she came back one time, and she's all bug-eyed because she saw a mountain lion. And I'm like, I'm not really sure, because we're out in the plains, because we're out antelope hunting, so we're where antelope are supposed to be. And yeah, there's some canyons and stuff, but I was like, you think you saw a mountain lion? And she's like, yeah, I saw one. Oh my God. And I was like, all right. So we go over and we're looking around, and it was a red fox, but it was a good sized red fox, I will say that. And it had a really long tail. But I'm looking at it, I'm like, well, I'm sorry that that's a red fox. And she's like, no, it's not. Maybe that's not what I saw. And I was like, well, if that is what you saw, that in fact is a red fox. So it can be confusing sometimes. Absolutely, it can be.
So I've told this story to everybody at Walton's ad nauseum, but I was walking my 2 dogs one day, and I looked over into a hedgerow, and a mountain lion's got a very distinctive tail. I mean, there's not a lot in nature that looks just like that. And I saw it going into the woods. And one of my dogs reacted, which is the one I would expect, and the other one didn't. And I just pulled them away. I was like, I'm thinking to myself, there's no way. There's literally no way. So I put them back inside, looked it up online. They say, you know, like, I don't even think they called it sporadic. I think they called it like unlikely or something like that for sightings. And I went back the next day with almost a magnifying glass looking for a track or something. But
you're convinced.
I kind of am. I really kind of am. Now, could it be a bobcat? Absolutely not. Could it have been something else? Yeah, it definitely could have been. Could have been something just floating in the wind that happened to look like it.
Because you saw the tail.
I want to believe that it is that. Yeah.
Hey, sure, go for it, man. No, they for a long time, the Kansas Department of Wildlife and Parks denied that there were mountain lions around. Mm-hmm. That can't be said anymore. There is no more doubt. There are mountain lions in Kansas, and whether we want to think about that when we're out walking little draws and stuff when we're pheasant hunting, you know, whether we want to think about that or not. There are some around. Are there very many? No, I don't think so. But there's some.
The favorite meme I've seen in the last, I don't know how long, because it's amazing. It's a picture, obviously, taken along a narrow trail with heavy trees on either side, and it's a little bit of a clearing. It looks like it's 30 yards up. And there's a mountain lion with its head low. And you know when they put their heads low and their shoulders are just massive. And it's looking back up as the person's taking a picture. And somebody said, "What do you say to this?" And someone said, "Whatever the opposite of pss, 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 which you do to a house cat is." Oh, man, if those mountain lions, in general, they're not going to come for you. They know you're not. They're smart. They know you're not its prey. Right. You look too big.
Right.
But if they were to decide that it needed to eat you, you'd have a hard time.
Yeah, and I totally agree with that, 100%. And you know, you think about, you know, there was that story last year, a year before, about the guy in Colorado that killed one. Yep. And it's a true statement. The guy was not BS, and it was all verified. And I would like people to understand. Like I was at the zoo one time with my daughter in Colorado Springs, and they were feeding the baby mountain lions that were probably, 30-pound kittens at that point. And they fed them, and they were voracious. Yep. I mean, and I think to think of a person like being attacked by that. And what I saw, and the way I saw those, those were zoo animals. They weren't wild animals. They were zoo animals, and they were attacking that food. And it was reported, he had some cuts and scrapes. And I'm like, Yeah, I bet so.
So I might be wrong here, but it did turn out that was a really young mountain.
It was a young one.
Really young.
So were the ones that I saw eating.
But you're right.
They were
Yeah.
20
That
or
takes
30
nothing
pounders.
away from what he did.
Yeah.
Like,
I was like,
you walk away from a fight with a mountain lion, you've got a pair.
Yeah, I love to make jokes about mountain lions when we're out on the trails and stuff because like I'm a bigger guy. I'm like, I'm like 6'2". They're not going to come after me at all. My wife is a scrawny little thing. I'm like, yeah, I'm putting you behind me because that way they can, after I go by, then they can jump on you. So it's kind of a source of endless jokes. And we've got some other relatives that we hike with a lot, and the gal is like short. So there's always lots of short jokes going on. But yeah, we're always talking about, we're all good with mountain lions because they're obviously going to go for you. So it's a lot of fun.
Well, the good
Go ahead. We do the same thing on our ATV trip in that we're always concerned, are we going to run into some sort of wildlife that's, going to be dangerous? We usually go for bears. Bears sound more fun. But
right.
One of the guys that always goes, he was in a motorcycle accident years ago and he has a bum leg. And he won't mind me telling this because he's the first one to speak up and be like, yep, that's me. But Todd Woodburn, best realtor in the state of Kansas.
Absolutely.
But he always goes with us and we're like, yeah, we're not worried about bears because we got Todd. We can all outrun Todd.
Yep.
And Todd's going to be the one that gets taken down by whatever's there.
So this is obviously a false sense of security I'm giving myself. But when I went to college, I knew a kid who's in southwestern New Jersey. So, I mean, they call it the Garden State for a reason. It is mostly wilderness. And his golden retriever used to tree black bears all the time.
Mm-hmm.
So if it's going to run from a black bear or run from a golden retriever, I'm not that scared of it, right?
Sure.
I know that's a false sense of security, but it's like, you run from a golden retriever, I can scare you, but
that's a black bear,
right?
That you're talking about.
Yeah.
Which
grizzly, no.
Yeah. And like I've gone up to Boundary Waters Canoe Area in Minnesota, which is a wonderful area. Everybody should go there. It's fantastic. But there's a fair number of bears up there. And so you have to watch a little video on how to act if a bear comes into your camp and all that kind of stuff before you go in. And what I remember them saying up there is to treat a black bear as long as it doesn't already have your food. Like if it's just wandering into camp going like, hey, what's going on? As it's coming in, like treat it like a dog you would that comes into your yard at home. Like bang some pots together, throw rocks at it, get out of here, and all that kind of stuff, and just yell at it. And they can be run off pretty much. Yeah. In fact, we've got a podcast coming up on the Kansas BHA podcast where the guy that I do that with, Jeff, he has a relative in Wisconsin. He was just up in Boundary Waters. Jeff went over to Wisconsin to hang out with some relatives for a couple of days. And then what they did was chase bears with dogs. It's like a practice session that they have apparently. It's a sport up there, and they chase bears with dogs. And so we've got a podcast coming up where they talk about that. That's awesome. Check that out.
We absolutely will.
Apparently that is a thing.
All right. So BHA is a absolutely great organization. Obviously, we've decided at Walton's to get behind it and support you guys in whatever way we can. How can somebody who's listening to this in any area of the country get involved?
It's very easy. We have a website. It's backcountryhunters.org, and you can go on there, join up. There's fundraisers going on. Like right now, there's a Hike to Hunt fundraiser going on. You can do that. The other guy that does the podcast with me, Jeff, he and I are both on there. We're fundraisers, so you can look us up on there. Throw a little cash to BHA if you want to. But yeah, backcountryhunters.org. You can join up, and it's pretty easy. Just simple as that. We're on Facebook, Instagram, all that stuff as well. Our podcast sponsored by Walton's. Thank you guys so much for that.
Yeah, absolutely.
The Kansas BHA podcast, and you can get that any place that you get your podcast. It's everywhere. And we're luckily starting to grow pretty exponentially at this point. So that's kind of cool. That's going on right now. And locally we're starting to have some events again, trying to figure out what works, what doesn't work, all of that sort of stuff right now. So we're going through that process. Had kind of a virtual pint night the other night. That, sitting and staring at your computer, drinking beer is not that cool. But
it's better than just sitting and staring at your computer.
That is true. That is very true. But so we're trying different things, trying to figure out what people want, because we want to do things with people. We have people with a lot of energy and a lot of excitement. We're a very passionate organization. I have learned that extremely well. One thing I should mention, I just thought of this. We just partnered with Friends of the Kaw, I believe is the name of it. It's an organization that helps with the Kansas River up in the northeast part of the state, and the rivers up there. And we are going to construct and maintain a spot along the river for canoeists to stop at. And that sort of thing. Nice. And that's the kind of stuff that we do. Yeah. And so they just got an easement onto some property to have a stopover for canoers and kayakers and stuff like that going down the river. And for example, I had no idea that was a big issue in the northeast part of the state, because I like I said, I don't do a lot of stuff where there's people around and there's more people up there, frankly. And so I don't typically go there, although I'm sure you can get away from people up there. But at our pint nights, which is our staple event, generally done like at a bar or here at Walton's or someplace where we have a presentation or something. I got an earful, talking about passionate members. I got an earful from several people who's like, man, if you are all about public waters, then help us up here in the northeast part of the state, because we've got some issues going on. And so we're like, okay, wasn't aware of that. So found out about that. And was told several times about that by passionate folks and listened to them. And so now we're doing some stuff up there.
That's awesome.
So just things like that.
And for anyone in the Wichita area, or even the greater Wichita, Sedgwick County area, their pint nights that we have here are an absolute blast. They're either really funny and fun or super emotional. There was the film night that we did here.
Yes.
The one of the father with the disabled daughter and the deer hunting, and the one with the hunting dog. I don't think there was a dry eye in the place. I mean, I was looking around and everybody was rubbing their eyes. I was like, oof, this is rough. It's where you kind of don't look at the screen for a couple of seconds. You're like, all right, think of something else. I'm happy. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. But absolutely top-notch organization. We've loved being partnered with you guys. It's a great way to give back.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. Well, I appreciate that. And you guys are a great organization to work with as well. What you were talking about was our Public Landowner Film Fest. And that's usually unveiled at our national convention, which is the Rendezvous. COVID, thank you. That got canceled. And so we had a virtual rendezvous and unveiled that. So yeah, we'll be doing that again this year. By the way, little teaser, Kansas plays a prominent part this year in the Public Landowner Film Fest, which is kind of cool.
Yeah.
And so that was kind of fun. But yeah, that is either funny or a very emotional time. It's just little film clips made by BHA members across the country, and they submit them and put them together, and it makes for a really fun night.
Very cool.
And I can't thank you guys enough for all that you're doing for BHA. You guys are involved with lots of organization to get folks outdoors, and our part of you guys' vision is to make sure that there's a place for those folks to go hunt, fish, do whatever they want to do to complete the package. And so thank you guys for doing all of that, for all of the organizations that you guys participate with.
Yeah, and thank you too, because you put in countless hours into BHA, local Kansas BHA, everything. It's intense, like what you do. I think it takes a special person to be able to do that. Not everyone off the street would walk in and fill your shoes. Yeah, you do a lot.
I don't know. It's a labor of love. I really do love it. I'm passionate about it, so I love it.
All right. So last thing, this is a BHA hat. That is the softest t-shirt known to man.
It is.
Where can people buy these?
Go to backcountryhunters.org, same website, and there's a link for the store. Go there. It's all right there. We got some cool new shirts out too, by the way. Some good hats. Those are great, comfortable hats.
This is the best hat.
Yeah. Just at the store at backcountryhunters.org.
Awesome. We'll put links to that in the YouTube video and on the Meatgistics post. Thank you so much.
Hey, thank you.
Yep. Thank you, Kurt. Appreciate
You bet.
it.
Glad to be here.
Guys, we'll see you next time. Look out at meatgistics.com for a post with more information about this podcast.
And don't forget, if you have questions, comments, concerns, email us at podcast.
Not concerns.
Concerns are fine. Anything you want to say, podcast@waltonsinc.com. Send us an email and let us know what you think and what questions you have.
Yep.